Hello interwebs, I'm Dave.
Shh.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And I'm Jacob.
And today we're looking at putting together a very, very quiet PC.
Can't you just call it a silent build?
Well, no, it's not actually silent. We couldn't go completely passive because we still want to have some serious gaming power. We never compromise on frame rates here at PCGamesN.
Never. So let's get into it. Here's our silent, very quiet PC
Very
build.
quiet PC build, very quiet. So we opted for an Intel build this time around, mostly because we wanted to use the Asus TUF Z370 motherboard, which has ever so slight hints of yellow on it, and that matches the highlights on the Be Quiet Silent Base 600 case we've opted for this time around.
We've stuffed an Intel i7-8700K into the Movo because we want this to be a real powerhouse for whatever game you throw at it.
What really matters for our very, very quiet build, however, is the cooler. We've chosen to keep our chip frosty.
Since we're aiming for something that makes as little noise as possible, we ditched the idea of a liquid cooler pretty early on. Nothing against these loopy chillers, but we want as few moving parts in this rig as possible while maintaining pretty reasonable temperatures.
So for this reason, we've opted for the Noctua D15S. This is the single fan variant of the D15 and offers a ginormous dual tower heatsink to draw as much heat away from the CPU as feasibly possible with only a 140mm fan.
The 140mm fan is very important. The smaller the fan, the harder it has to work, and the harder it has to work, the louder it gets. By opting for a 140mm fan, we can make it so that only under extremely heavy CPU load will this fan ramp up far enough for you to actually hear it whatsoever. Even at 100% speeds, this fan is exceptionally quiet.
If you did fancy an all-in-one liquid cooler, you could instead grab the Corsair H115i Pro. The pump adds a little more unnecessary noise into the equation for our needs with this build, but the silent maglev fans are near silent, even at the worst of times.
If you don't want even a single fan in your system, you could opt for a completely fanless heatsink design instead. These tend to come in the form of extremely large heatsinks designed to spread the heat out over a much greater surface area and utilising heat pipes efficiently to pull the heat away from your CPU.
There is one drawback with these fanless coolers, however. While they offer completely silent operation, they can often only cool a lower TDP rating than some of the K-series SKUs run at. Gamers tend to prefer these processors due to their overclocking potential and higher clock speeds, and you may have to drop some of that computational power to make use of these passive coolers.
What the chunky air cooler we've chosen to go with today also allows us to do is remove the rear fan from the case. Sure, it would have aided in extracting the hot air generated by the components, but we've got a big 140mm fan already doing plenty of work, so we'll sacrifice the few degrees this time around.
Yeah, just a few degrees. We've decided to ditch any hard drives whatsoever in this build. We just can't bear the sound of a platter whirring to life, and the vibrations really make a racket when you're transferring lots of data. Nope, that's not happening today.
No, instead we've opted for an entirely stationary solid-state drive. These little drives have no moving parts, so long as you don't count NAND gates and electrons as moving parts that is, and they are speedy to boot too.
Yeah, if you don't want to ditch your hard drives just yet, we do understand, and you can always try to ensure that they are fitted in your case through a rubber interposing layer, which will remove some of the vibration and noise from reverberating throughout your metallic little chassis.
As you may have already noticed, it doesn't matter whatsoever what colour or style our motherboard is because we've opted for a completely windowless case, a rare occurrence in today's chassis market.
Yes, the Be Quiet Silent Base 600 is a completely silence optimised chassis and a perfect fit for this build.
In lieu of that pesky window, Be Quiet have fitted this case with extra sound dampening material. If you feel your case may need muting, you can also pick up a roll of this material and fit it yourself.
So we've only got the one case fan fitted inside this case. The single Pure Wings 2 fan is located right in the middle of the front of the chassis, so the graphics card and M.2 drive aren't entirely stifled for air.
When it comes to the PSU, we've opted for the Be Quiet Straight Power 11. You could also pick up a PSU that has an eco mode, and this will mean that the fans won't spin up unless it's under extremely heavy load. Luckily, when it comes to the graphics card, we don't have to worry too much about cooling. We've chosen the beefy MSI GTX 1080 Ti Gaming X Trio. We do not compromise.
Yes, this Belgian blue of a graphics card is completely capable of taking care of itself when it comes to cooling. Fitted with triple fans and a gigantic heatsink, it barely hits 70 degrees even under the most demanding of graphical loads.
Luckily, because it stays exceptionally cool, those fans have to do very little work. In fact, they won't even spin up until temperatures exceed 60 degrees C, meaning we get a completely silent GPU for all but heavy gaming loads. Perfect.
There are a few other options to tame your graphics cards, however, and you don't necessarily have to hand over wads of cash to do it.
If your cooler isn't quite up to speed, you can always upgrade with a custom cooler, such as the ones from Arctic or the extra beefy Morpheus from Rigintech. They might not look quite so sleek as those you'd find attached to your out-of-the-box card, but they will get the job done exceptionally well in most cases, and you are free to change up the fans as you see fit.
Another option, should you see fit to do so, is to replace the air cooler attached to the GPU with a liquid cooler cold plate. NZXT sell the Kraken G12, which allows you to attach their own Kraken liquid coolers directly onto the GPU. But Corsair have also dabbled in for some older GPU designs too. If you're really brave, you can even mod your own card. Just be careful, that GPU die is very exposed, and if it cracks, that's game over.
This technique can offer better thermals, and if you are smart with the fans on your radiators, can be pretty quiet too. Although, as with the CPU option, you are adding a pump into the equation, which can be a little noisy when set to the recommended maximum power at all times.
But our graphics card was doing such a good job this time around, however, that in the end, we ditched the front case fan too. Get out of here.
Even if you can't spare the fans, or your temps are teetering on uncomfortable, you can still head to your BIOS and tweak the fan curves for some extra noise saving.
Yeah, with the Asus board we're using today, we can drop our fan curves onto the silent preset, which many other manufacturers offer too, something along the same lines.
If not, then you can always set these yourself. Just move the values up on the graph so that your fans ramp up slower, or don't ramp up quite as high as they did previously. Then boot up Windows and check your idle temps in an application such as RealTemp, Afterburner, or Hardware Monitor.
If you're happy with the results, then run a quick benchmark with these apps open and take note of the maximum temperature you've recorded. Afterburner is a good choice, as you can see how often and for how long the temperatures stayed at their peak result.
If you are happy with the results, then you can leave the curve as it is, or push it a little further. If temps are a little high, then you'll want to correct the curve again. You want to also make sure your curve is as smooth as possible, otherwise you will really notice when your fans ramp up and down depending on the load. While smoother may not be the most optimized for super low fan speeds at all times, it will likely be less noticeable and less detrimental to your experience.
So now for those all-important digits.
Our GPU was idling at 45 degrees C and reached a whopping peak temp of 69 degrees C.
Yeah, that is one capable GPU cooler.
It really is. That i7-8700K, on the other hand, reached 42 degrees idle and 85 degrees under load.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, that mammoth heatsink is also exceptionally capable, even with only a single fan shifting all the hot air out the rear of the case.
The real test, however, is making sure that this PC is only seen and not heard. For that, we'll have to try our best to keep noise to an absolute minimum in our studio. Easier said than done.
Yeah, Jake is really loud. Yeah, we've placed the PC on our streaming booth, shameless plug, check the channel for all our great streams, but this should be the quietest nook we can apprehend for the time being in our busy, noisy office.
Here's the results. So there you have it, our very, very, very quiet gaming PC build. Sure, we could have gone fully passive, but we didn't want to give up any of those precious frames in game.
Yeah, so let us know what you think and what you're running in your own silent-centric PC builds in the comments below.
If you've liked what you've seen and hopefully only heard ever so slightly, then give us a like and subscribe.
Yeah, so thanks for watching and make sure to check out the channel for more PC gaming and hardware stuff.
Bye!